If Scarlett Johansson pulls up in a windowless van and offers you a lift to who knows where, what do?
You say yes!
Hello everyone, happy Halloween and welcome to another Rewind review. In this video I'm taking a look at a movie that was billed as one of the most disturbing and unsettling movies of the year that it was released, and that is Under the Skin. Initially shown in several film festivals in 2013 and released theatrically in 2014, Under the Skin sees a mysterious young woman seducing lonely men in the evening hours in Scotland. However, events lead her to begin a process of self-discovery. Based on the novel by Michel Faber, the adaptation was directed by Jonathan Glazer, who co-writes the screenplay with Walter Campbell and Milo Adika, and stars Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy McWilliams, Adam Pearson, Dougie McConnell, and many unsuspecting people. I'll get onto that in a minute. I remember hearing a lot about this movie when it started doing the rounds in the film festival circuit and the general buzz surrounding it too, so it's kind of surprising that hardly anyone seems to talk about it these days. This is actually one of the earliest A24 produced movies, and at the time it was one of their highest profile films. I'll be honest, when this movie released and I saw what it was the critics were saying about it, I was a little put off about actually seeing it because of how disturbing they were making it out to be. I have said on this channel multiple times over the years that I'm not the biggest fan of horror movies, and the prospect of seeing something as disturbing as this was being made out to be, it didn't really appeal to me. But even so, I was still quite curious about this movie and I kept an eye on it until eventually it premiered on Film 4 and I decided to watch it. And it didn't have any adverts! But I will admit, after my first viewing of this movie, and my second, I didn't really know what to think of this movie overall, and it did leave me with a lot of questions. Now that is not to say that I didn't think this movie was good with excellent things in it, but it was so different to anything I had seen at the time and it did leave me a bit puzzled. It's definitely a lot more artsy and experimental than I normally watched at the time, and far subtler too, with most of the information being left unsaid and up to you to interpret based on what you see rather than what you're told. So I'll admit, I did struggle to understand everything in my first viewing, but my second viewing, along with a really good analysis video from Chris Stuckman that I'll link down in the description, I did understand this movie a lot better. And now, getting to revisit this movie over 10 years later, my understanding of it is even better. I'm still a little conflicted on certain aspects of it, but I do think that it is very good and quite unnerving. The story for this, without giving too much away, sees Scarlett Johansson playing an alien seductress who combs the roads and streets of Scotland in search of human prey. But after one chance encounter, she finds herself on a path to self-discovery as she explores the complexities and superficialities of human nature. I suppose if you break it down, it is pretty straightforward and it does have a very simple story, but that's not the focus of the movie. Instead, this is much more focused on the character that Scarlett Johansson plays and what it is that she experiences. It's a slow burner that starts off as a creepy hunter-oriented film with Scarlett Johansson's character seeking out and preying on men for mysterious reasons. But as the film progresses, it starts to become a lot more thought-provoking and deeper, and it explores both the best and worst aspects of humanity and our obsession with beauty and superficiality, and it's all shown through this alien's perspective. It's a movie that gets you to think and it invites you to ask questions without necessarily providing answers, and that makes this one of those movies that you do need to properly watch. This isn't something that you can just kind of throw on in the background and dip in and out of. You need to properly sit down and pay attention to this. It may feel like a load of scenes in this are a little bit pointless and events just kind of happen, but I don't think that anything that happens in this is unnecessary. As I said, the movie focuses on this alien that slowly starts to become more curious about human life, and she ends up doing stuff that the average person would do, like watching TV, listening to music, going to the shops, trying food, sex, and experiencing various emotions that she most likely has never felt before. I won't lie, and especially when it comes to the overall pacing for this movie, it will divide people. It takes its time to get to where it is that it wants to go, and the pacing throughout this is quite steady. I am slightly in the middle when it comes to the overall pacing for this movie because, on the one hand, I do think that there are some sequences and some scenes that do go on maybe a little longer than they really need to, and they probably could have done with a little bit of a trim down. But at the same time, I don't think that anything in this movie drags, and I do think that it is the right runtime. Yes, the overall pace for this movie is quite slow, and that isn't going to resonate with everyone, but I do think that it is used effectively, and it does add and it does contribute to the overall creepy and unsettling tone. And that creepy, unsettling vibe is helped a great deal by the score. The soundtrack from composer Micah Levi is a great aid in adding to the eeriness and overall unsettling tone. The combination of low tones and sounds and that really scratchy violin sound effect that they've gone for, it does set you on edge and it does help provide a lot of atmosphere and tension. It quite literally gets under your skin. Admittedly, I don't think that there's really that much to the soundtrack, but I do think that the main theme especially is very recognisable and memorable, and I do think that how the soundtrack is used throughout this movie is both effective and excellent. And speaking of excellence, Scarlett Johansson is absolutely brilliant in this as the lead character. You might have noticed by now that I haven't referred to the main character by her name, and that's because this is one of those movies where the main character doesn't actually have one. In fact, none of the characters do, which I'll admit is a little bit awkward. Anyway, this is absolutely one of Scarlett Johansson's best performances to date, with a very subtle and often silent performance that effortlessly manages to capture the mindset of this alien. Not that she doesn't have any speaking lines whatsoever in this movie, she does have a few lines of dialogue here and there, and I will admit, her British accent is pretty good. But this is a role, in fact, this is a film with very little dialogue for long stretches of time, and Scarlett Johansson is forced to rely on her physical performance and facial expressions. And she absolutely knocks it out of the park and manages to hold your attention whenever she's on screen. And the way she portrays the internal struggle, the turmoil and fascination with humanity is very good, and you do see a very slow transformation throughout the runtime, where she goes from this seductive, emotionless predator on a mission to where she ultimately lands by the end of the film. She is fantastic. When it comes to the performances from everyone else involved in this movie, I don't think that there's anything really to write home about, but I do think that everyone involved in this is pretty serviceable for their roles. The characters themselves can be a little bit one note, but I do think that the main performers do well and feel believable, especially Adam Pearson as one of the potential victims, who has a huge impact on Scarlett's character, and apparently he even helped write the dialogue for the scene that he's in. But as I said, most of the characters in this do feel quite one note. In some instances, I do think that it is justified, like the biker for instance, but in other cases, like the character that the female meets on a bus, I think that they could have done a little bit more there. I mean, he doesn't seem to question anything, but I don't think that it makes this any less compelling. They feel real and believable, and they add to the female's character development. One of the most unique aspects of this movie, and one of the parts that managed to get people's attention, is the fact that the majority of people that appear throughout the runtime are just normal people going about their day. Throughout the first half of the film, there's several scenes of Scarlett Johansson driving around in this van, or scenes of her walking through the streets and interacting with people. And as far as I'm aware, most of them are not actors. They are just ordinary people going about their day. That line does get blurred whenever the female interacts with people that have a significant impact on her character development, like the guy giving out flowers on the motorway, or the multiple people that she takes back to her place. I'm guessing they are actors, but I'm not 100% sure. I highly doubt the average person would be happy getting roped into a movie like this and being told, right, now we need you to strip, and we need to see everything. I won't lie, there is a load of nuddy stuff in this, and that's why I'm trying not to do too many cutaways. But it is handled well. I don't think that it's gratuitous, and I do think that it does work and make sense within context of the overall story and theme of the film. And when it comes to Scarlett Johansson's character, it's not done through a sexual lens. It's handled very sensitively, naturally, and within character. Anyway, having the female interacting with real people does help give this movie a much more genuine sense of realism, and it does make it feel like you are seeing actual events unfolding. Because technically you are, especially when it comes to that sequence where Scarlett Johansson's walking down the street and she trips and falls, and there's a load of people who rush over to her and help her back up. None of those people were aware that they were making a film. They were all real people. It is a very strange filmmaking decision, but it does work and it does pay off overall, because it does help make this feel a lot more believable and unsettling. The way that it's shot, the cinematography on the streets, the sound design, it all contributes to the grounded nature of the film. For us in the UK, it does feel quite close to home, and even though I don't live in Scotland, where it is that they've actually filmed this movie, the locations that they've picked, the motorways, the towns, the villages, the streets, it literally feels like it could be just down the road. To be honest, I think the most fantastical thing about this movie is the fact that the Stagecoach bus actually shows up on time. It's an odd and slightly experimental approach for a movie like this, but I do think that it does pay off. And it's not like they shy away from the more fantastical stuff altogether, because this does have some really out there and trippy sequences. There's not many of them, but there are a few sequences that do feel quite reminiscent of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And some of the effects work, again, there's not too much, but honestly, it looks great overall and subtle, using a mix of VFX, prosthetics and camera trickery. I'm still trying to figure out how they do the walking on water sequences. And when it comes to the sound design, the approach that they've taken for it is very stripped back. It's simple and very effective. It helps add to the atmosphere, the groundedness and the otherworldliness in a really effective way. Plus, it does have some very jarring moments that will absolutely make you jump out your skin. This is an excellent movie, and it is one that I do think is definitely worth checking out. Overall, this is an unsettling but thought-provoking film that analyses humanity and our obsession obsession with beauty and superficiality. The story itself might be threadbare, but the film more than makes up for it with a truly unsettling atmosphere, a brilliant performance from Scarlett Johansson, an eerie and unnerving score, some fantastic visuals, and a grounded tone that makes this feel far more real despite the sometimes out there moments. I won't lie, I don't think this movie is as disturbing as it has been made out to be in the past, but it can be. And there are scenes, one especially, that will stay with you for a good while after you see this. Yes, there are some pacing issues and some scenes that could probably have been cut, but the slow burning tension really helps to make this a far more unsettling experience that will quite literally get under your skin. If you have never seen this before, I think you should give it a try. This movie definitely will not be a film for everyone. It is quite artsy and a bit experimental, but I do think that it is worth a watch, or if you have seen this before, it is worth revisiting. I think that this is an excellent film, and I am glad that I decided to revisit it. So with all that being said, my rating for Under the Skin is an 8 out of 10. And with that, the first Halloween video of 2024 is now out the way. Well, I think that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, so if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification button. If you have seen Under the Skin, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future Rewind reviews you would like to see me do, let me know down below. And keep an eye out for the next Halloween video. It's going to be a fun one, but until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Happy Halloween!